He said he had a business dinner. Instead, he was celebrating her birthday. So I showed up in a red dress with her mother, her father, and her two brothers, right as he kissed her across the table. If you've ever been lied to, gaslighted, or made to feel small, this story will show you what happens when a woman stops apologizing and starts reclaiming everything. Rachel Dawson had always believed in hard work, loyalty, and slow-burn love. She was 35, a senior HR executive at one of the top pharmaceutical companies in Boston, the kind of woman who remembered her coworkers' birthdays, stayed late without complaining, and still sent her mother handwritten letters every other Sunday. For 8 years, she had also been a wife. Her husband, Ethan Clark, was the founder of a mid-sized tech startup that had seen its fair share of ups and downs. When they first met at a networking event, Rachel was drawn to his ambition, his eyes lit with ideas, his confidence tempered by charm. He wasn't like the others, she thought. He listened. He asked about her dreams. He held her hand like it meant something. They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony on a vineyard outside San Diego. Her father cried. Her sister toasted to the kind of love that builds, not burns. Rachel had believed it. With every cell in her body, she believed it. But love, she would learn, isn't always what it claims to be. The cracks began like they often do, too small to see unless you're looking for them. Ethan started coming home later. He had always been busy, but now he was unreachable. Dinners turned into solo meals with leftovers. Their bedtime talks, once filled with ideas and shared laughter, became quiet, scrolling sessions on opposite sides of the bed. When she asked, he smiled distractedly. Just swamped with investors, babe. You know how it is. We're so close to launch. Rachel nodded. Of course, she knew how startups worked. Sacrifices were part of the deal. She reminded herself to be understanding, supportive, patient. That's what a good wife does. She tried harder, made his favorite meals on Tuesdays, left encouraging notes in his laptop bag, even downloaded a podcast about venture capital so she could better understand his world. He didn't seem to notice. Instead, he began pointing out little things: the laundry left in the dryer too long, the dishes stacked the wrong way, her missed call during his afternoon meeting. You've been a bit off lately, he said one night as she brought him tea. Everything okay? The irony made her stomach turn, but she smiled anyway. Just tired, I guess. That was the first time she started to feel it, the slow, unspoken shift from being with someone to feeling beneath them. Still, she stayed. Tried more. Rachel told herself it was just a phase. Every couple hits a rough patch. Maybe she was too sensitive. Maybe she hadn't been affectionate enough. Maybe the new medication for her anxiety had dulled her spirit. That last one was his idea. You think maybe the meds are making you more paranoid? He asked gently after she'd mentioned feeling distant from him. You haven't quite been yourself. She had nodded, even apologized, then called her therapist to schedule another session. It never occurred to her, not at that point, that maybe she wasn't the one who needed fixing. Her mother noticed the change during a weekend visit. You've lost weight, she said, frowning. Everything okay with you two? Rachel smiled too quickly. Just work stress. You know how it is. But inside, something was growing. A quiet ache, a tiny voice that whispered, this isn't what marriage is supposed to feel like. The loneliness crept in slowly, disguised as independence. She filled her weekends with yoga brunches and organizing the linen closet. She told herself it was good space, was healthy. They were two ambitious people, pursuing big things. Not every couple had to be joined at the hip. But on Sunday nights, when Ethan would retreat to the home office for just a few hours more, she found herself sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, staring at the door like it owed her something. She noticed other things, too. His cologne, changing new shirts she hadn't bought, sudden interest in running when he'd always hated cardio. She didn't say anything. Not yet. Then there were the phones always face down, always on silent. When she reached for his, once by accident, thinking it was hers, he pulled it back too fast. Work stuff, he said too casually. Rachel nodded, but her chest tightened, and still she blamed herself. That was perhaps the cruelest part of the slow unraveling, the way it made her doubt her own reflection. She started asking herself questions she never imagined asking. Am I being too much? Am I not enough? Did I love him into boredom? Have I become invisible? The answers never came, but the questions stayed. She found herself clinging to small moments. A kiss on the forehead, a random text that said miss you the way he still called her Ray when he wanted something. It was enough. Until it wasn't. One morning after Ethan left for yet another early breakfast meeting that hadn't been in the shared calendar, Rachel stood in their kitchen staring at 2 mugs, hers, and the one she always used to make for him. And something inside her cracked. Not because she knew the truth yet, not because she had proof, but because in that moment she realized something much sadder than betrayal. She missed herself. It was raining the night Rachel saw it, not the kind of romantic drizzle that softened city lights and made people kiss under umbrellas. No, this was the kind of rain that sliced through the air, sideways soaked you through your coat, and made streetlights blur into ghosts. She wasn't supposed to be there. That Wednesday night, she'd stayed late at work, wrapped up in quarterly reports and the mindless rhythm of productivity. On the way home, craving something warm and impulsive, she'd decided to pick up takeout from a small French bistro on 7th, the kind she and Ethan used to love. She didn't see them at first. She was too busy shaking out her umbrella and scanning the menu taped to the window. Then through the glass she froze. There he was, Ethan, her husband. Seated at a table near the window, laughing in that low, relaxed way he rarely used anymore. His sleeves were rolled up. His hand was on someone else's. The woman across from him was young. Younger than Rachel, certainly. Maybe late 20s. She had dark waves of hair, a red silk blouse, and a kind of effortless radiance that made her seem like she belonged in places like this, like he belonged there with her. They looked like a scene from a movie, the kind Rachel used to sigh over and believe in. Only now she was watching from the outside, literally. The raindrops streaked down the glass like tears she hadn't let fall yet. Rachel didn't move. She didn't run inside or bang on the window. She didn't scream. She just stood there, soaked, shaking, staring. And in that moment, something inside her broke. Not in the loud, shattering way, but in the way glass sometimes spiderwebs from a single crack silently and all at once. She stood there long enough for the hostess inside to notice her. That's when Rachel turned away, numb legs carrying her back to the car like she was moving through a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. She didn't remember the drive home, didn't remember changing into dry clothes or curling up on the couch with her knees to her chest. All she could see was them. Ethan's hand brushing a lock of hair from the woman's face, the way he smiled at her, a smile she hadn't seen in months. The next morning, she called a private investigator. It wasn't anger that drove her. Not yet. It was something deeper, something colder, like a need for truth, tangible and heavy that she could hold in her hands. She didn't tell anyone. She went to work. She smiled when people asked how her weekend was. She came home and cooked dinner. Ethan didn't mention the meeting, said he had to fly to New York next week for a pitch. She nodded. Of course. 2 weeks later, the files came in. Photos time-stamped, receipts, hotel stays, restaurant bills. A brief, heartless audio clip. Ethan's voice and hers. Olivia laughing, flirting, making plans. And the bracelet. In one photo, Olivia was unwrapping a small blue velvet box at a brunch spot downtown. Inside was the same Tiffany bracelet Rachel had seen in Ethan's browser history 2 months ago, the one he'd said was for her for their anniversary. Just thinking ahead. He'd told her with a wink Rachel had believed him. Now, watching another woman's wrist sparkle with the gift meant for her, she laughed. Then she cried. Then she stopped crying and just stared. The investigator had done his job well. Too well. Rachel now knew more about Olivia than she wanted to. Where she worked, where she lived, how she met Ethan at a tech conference last year. There were records of repeated encounters. Olivia had visited their home while Rachel was away on a company retreat. The bedroom camera she'd installed a month ago, a last desperate attempt to confirm her suspicions, had footage she would never ever watch. But the most painful part, Olivia knew. She wasn't some innocent woman fooled by a charming liar. Multiple messages, emails, and cross-referenced posts showed she'd known Ethan was married from early on. She'd joked about it in a message Rachel could barely finish reading. "Tell your wife thanks for building such a responsible man. I'll take it from here." Rachel put the papers down, walked into the bathroom, and vomited. That night, she sat in the dark with the files spread across the dining table. Her home. Their home was silent. Ethan was out again. Late dinner with the CTO, he'd said. "Don't wait up." She didn't respond. Instead, she looked at the woman in the photo. Olivia with her champagne smile and stolen jewelry, and felt something strange rise in her chest. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even fury. It was clarity. She had not imagined it. She had not been dramatic or insecure or unwell. For months, maybe years, she'd been made to feel crazy, gaslighted by late nights, turned-around questions, and gentle accusations about her medication. He'd carefully twisted her worry into weakness, but now she had proof the gaslight was out. And in its place, the harsh, liberating light of reality. She was not crazy. She had just loved someone who preferred his lies over her truth. And finally she saw it clearly. Through glass, through silence, through pain. The woman Rachel had been. The one who waited, hoped, blamed herself. She was gone. The woman sitting in that dark kitchen now. She wasn't going to wait anymore. Rachel didn't cry anymore. The sobs that once racked her chest had hardened into something quieter, heavier. Not rage, not yet. Just a kind of stillness that came when you finally stopped denying reality. She moved through the days like a chess player, calm, controlled, calculating each move 2 steps ahead. The first thing she did was pull out an old notebook her mother had given her after Rachel got married. Inside was a list written in her mother's neat looping script. Things to remember. Even when in love, keep your own account. Never co-sign unless it's your name first. Paper trails are protection. Just in case is not paranoia, it's wisdom. At the time, Rachel had laughed. Ethan was charming, ambitious. The kind of man who brought flowers on Tuesdays and kissed her shoulder before leaving for work. What could possibly go wrong? Now, years later, she whispered a silent thank you to her mother and reopened that account. By midnight, she had transferred every dollar of her personal income, salary, bonuses, freelance consulting work into it. The joint account remained untouched. For now, then came the legal groundwork. Rachel researched divorce attorneys in the city for 3 nights straight, filtering by discreet reviews and high-profile clientele. One name appeared again and again. Miranda Cheng, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for securing quiet, airtight settlements, especially in cases involving infidelity and financial misconduct. She booked an appointment under a pseudonym. At Miranda's office, Rachel didn't bring tissues. She brought a folder, photos, emails, account statements. "You'll want to see the one labeled Parkview Hotel," she said calmly, sliding the evidence across the desk. Miranda scanned the files in silence. "Has he been using marital funds for this affair?" she asked. Rachel nodded. "And possibly business funds, too. I noticed discrepancies in the marketing expense account. I used to help him set up those ledgers. I still have the old passwords." Miranda's lips curled slightly. "Smart. Keep documenting everything. Every receipt. Every meeting. Don't confront him yet. I won't." The third phase of Rachel's plan came with a bottle of wine and a laptop on her lap. Ethan was at another client dinner. Olivia, no doubt Rachel logged into their shared cloud storage. A harmless digital cabinet supposedly filled with tax documents and vacation photos. Only now she knew better. Inside a folder labeled Q2Q Pitch Deck, she found dozens of subfolders: Tranquil Bay, Palm Weekend Sundown, Getaway, all expenses, all billed to Ethan's startup lodgings restaurant receipts, private car hires. Each line item carefully categorized as client entertainment or research travel. But the real client, the real entertainment, was Olivia. Rachel took screenshots of every entry, then downloaded PDFs of the original receipts. The hotel charges matched the dates from the private investigator's files. There was no room for denial. He wasn't just cheating as a husband, he was stealing as a CEO. And she had it all. She organized everything into a private drive, one folder for financial misconduct, another for personal infidelity, a third for statements from mutual friends who had started to drift away in the past year, likely because they'd seen the truth and hadn't known how to tell her. Rachel added one final folder. Letters. Inside, she began writing herself emails, time-stamped journal entries, documenting every moment of manipulation she could recall. May 12th. He told me my anxiety meds were making me paranoid. I asked him about the strange call. He said I needed to relax. June 4th. Canceled date night, said the product launch was delayed. Later, I saw a charge from Maison Leclerc, just one entree, 2 glasses of wine, every lie, every gaslight, every seed of self-doubt he'd planted. She harvested them now like bitter fruit, labeled dated preserved. This wasn't about revenge. This was about record. It was late, nearly 2 a.m., when Rachel made tea and finally sat at the kitchen table staring at the ledger she'd started. The numbers didn't lie. In the past 18 months, Ethan had funneled over $40,000 in business funds toward his affair. Romantic getaways, jewelry, even part of Olivia's rent under the guise of strategic housing for regional sales liaison. She could almost laugh. The man she'd once trusted with her life had turned their marriage into a spreadsheet of deception. The door opened. Ethan walked in, damp from the rain. "Hey," he said casually, shaking off his coat. "Didn't expect you to still be up." "I couldn't sleep," Rachel replied, sipping her tea. He bent to kiss her head. She turned slightly so it landed on her cheek. "Long day. The usual?" he said, yawning. "Let's go to Napa soon, just the two of us. We need it." She nodded gently, like someone watching the last lie fall from a crumbling tower. Later, when he was asleep, she opened her phone and added one more note, September 18th. Promised Napa. Used the same line on Olivia based on PI footage. Doesn't remember what lies he's told anymore. She hit save, then she smiled. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was preparation. The invitation came on a Tuesday morning, buried beneath marketing reports in Rachel's inbox. It was from an event coordinator she vaguely remembered, a friend of a friend from a charity gala the year before. The email subject read Final Confirmation, Olivia's birthday dinner at Jardin Lumière. Rachel stared at it for a long time, not because she was confused, but because it was all suddenly so clear. Jardin Lumière, the same French restaurant she had once saved 3 paychecks to try, the one Ethan called pretentious and overpriced back when she suggested it for their 5th anniversary. She opened the message. The reservation was for Saturday, 8:00 p.m. The host was listed as Ethan Caldwell. Her stomach twisted. Not with pain, not anymore, but with a strange kind of curiosity. Was he really that bold, or just that careless? The guest list was included for seating arrangements. She scrolled Rebecca Wilson, Daniel Wilson, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, Ethan Caldwell, Olivia Wilson. So it was serious now, family serious. Rachel's phone buzzed with a follow-up text from the coordinator. "Sorry, just realized this may not be for you. Must have auto-filled from last year's gala list." Ignore, if so. She didn't reply. She stared at the glowing screen, then slowly smiled. No, she wouldn't ignore it. She would RSVP. 3 days later, Rachel sat across from Olivia's parents at a quiet cafe near the Botanical Gardens. She wore soft, beige, neutral, non-threatening, and kept her voice calm. "I'm Rachel Caldwell," she said simply. "Ethan's wife? Legally, emotionally?" "Not so much." Their expressions shifted instantly. "You must be mistaken," Olivia's mother said, stiffening. "I wish I were," Rachel replied. Then she pulled out the folder. It wasn't thick, only what mattered. A photo of Ethan and Olivia at a weekend retreat. A hotel bill charged to his business. A copy of their marriage license. One security photo from their home, time-stamped with a night. Ethan claimed he was in New York. She didn't push it across the table. She let it rest on her lap like a loaded question. "Why are you showing us this?" Mr. Wilson finally asked. "Because your daughter deserves the truth, and so do you." Rachel's hands remained steady. "You're flying in for her birthday. I know she thinks you couldn't make it." You're planning a surprise. They nodded slowly. So am I, she said. Silence fell like snow. I'm not here to make a scene, not the way you think. But I think you deserve to know what you're walking into. Olivia's brother Daniel, who had remained quiet until now, leaned forward. Are you saying she knows or doesn't? Rachel hesitated. I think she knows. At least part of her does, but Ethan is convincing. I believed him too once. The family exchanged uncertain looks. A mother's worry, a father's quiet fury, a brother's protective bristle. What exactly are you proposing? Mrs. Wilson finally asked. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I think we give Olivia the birthday surprise she'll never forget. And we let Ethan see exactly what love and loyalty really look like when it's not built on lies. Saturday night arrived like thunder dressed in pearls. Rachel wore a black satin dress that grazed her collarbones and fell effortlessly to her knees. On her wrist sparkled the Cartier bracelet Ethan once claimed was too expensive, the same one he'd ended up buying for Olivia. She'd bought her own. The driver pulled up in front of Jardin Lumière. Inside, the maitre d' greeted her by name. Madame Caldwell, he said with polite surprise. Your party is already being seated. Of course they were. She caught a glimpse of them through the crystal glass partition, Ethan in his navy blazer. Olivia glowing in champagne silk, her family laughing, chatting unaware. Rachel stepped aside before they could see her. Then, like a well-timed overture, Olivia's parents arrived. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson whispered, touching Rachel's arm. Rachel nodded. Are we ready? They moved as one through the entrance, a calm storm wrapped in civility. The maitre d' led them toward the reserved table. Happy birthday, Olivia, Rachel said softly, and all heads turned. Ethan froze mid-toast. Olivia blinked, confused. Her brother stood abruptly, and then the slow unraveling began. Who's she? Olivia asked, voice already wavering. Ethan stood too quickly. Rachel, what are you doing? I'm introducing myself, she interrupted smoothly, turning to Olivia's parents. To the guests of honor. Mrs. Wilson's smile was polite, tight, trembling at the edges. We've just been getting to know your husband? Ethan's color drained. They didn't. They did, Rachel said. And I didn't have to say much. Daniel stepped forward. You lied to our entire family. You sat at our table, pretended Olivia, Mr. Wilson said gently. How long have you known he was married? Olivia's lips parted. I thought they were separated. Rachel turned to her. Were we separated when you came to my house last March? When you slept in my bed? Gasps rippled across the room. Cutlery stilled. Conversations died. Ethan looked around. Trapped. This isn't the place. No, Rachel said, locking eyes with him. But you chose the setting. I'm just adding the final act. She pulled out her phone. No yelling, no drama. Just evidence, photos, receipts, timestamps. There's more, but this isn't a courtroom, it's a celebration. She looked at Olivia, whose face had turned ghost pale. And I hope this helps you realize the man who lies to one woman will lie to another. Rachel turned to the maitre d'. Cancel my table. I've lost my appetite. To Olivia's mother, she offered one last soft smile. Happy birthday to your daughter. May this be the year she learns what love isn't. She walked away before anyone could speak. Heels clicking like punctuation marks on a page Ethan never thought she'd write outside. Rachel inhaled the night air, crisp and sweet. She didn't need applause or revenge, just clarity. Behind her, the restaurant's glass facade reflected a room of fractured illusions. And in that reflection, Rachel saw herself finally whole. The red dress hadn't seen the light of day in years. It hung at the back of Rachel's closet like a forgotten dare, a dress she'd once bought on a whim, in a season of hope, silk fitted with a neckline that flirted with confidence. She had imagined wearing it on their 5th anniversary dinner. But when she'd stepped out of the bedroom that night, Ethan had barely looked up from his laptop. Trying a little hard. Don't you think, he'd said? Not unkindly, but sharply enough that the heat in her cheeks hadn't come from pride. It's not really your style. So she'd taken it off, folded it away, and over time she did the same to parts of herself. desire, daring, visibility. Now, years later, her fingers found the hanger again. The silk slipped free, like it had just been waiting. She laid it gently across her bed and stood back considering. This time, there was no one to ask if it was too much. This time, she wasn't dressing for Ethan. In the mirror, Rachel smoothed the dress over her hips. It still fit. Almost better than it had back then. She applied her lipstick red, the color he once called aggressive, then carefully, deliberately fastened the thin chain around her neck. It was her grandmother's pendant, a small diamond encased in rose gold. She hadn't worn it in years. Not because she forgot, but because it reminded her of too much. Her grandmother's strength, her mother's warnings, the women who had quietly endured, who had survived, and who had taught her how to do the same. But she wasn't enduring anymore. She was becoming. Her best friend Layla arrived just before sunset carrying takeout and wine. "God, you look lethal," she said, eyes wide like you just walked out of a noir film to ruin someone's life. Rachel smiled, pouring the wine. "Just one person's, maybe?" They sat cross-legged on the floor like they used to in college, containers of pasta between them, jazz playing low from the speaker. "Are you nervous?" Layla asked after a long sip. "No," Rachel replied honestly. "Not anymore." There was a pause. Then she added, "I think the worst part already happened. The moment I realized I was disappearing day by day, and no one, not even the man I loved, seemed to notice." Layla nodded. "So why now? Why go public? Why not just leave quietly like everyone expects?" Rachel looked down at her wine, then back at her friend. "Because silence protects the wrong people," she said. "And I protected him for years. I covered. I softened. I rationalized. I wanted to be the good wife so badly, I started vanishing into it." She leaned forward. "But this is for the part of me that still remembers how it felt to be seen. To wear red without apology, to speak without minimizing." Layla's eyes glistened. "You're not doing this to hurt him." Rachel shook her head. "No, I'm doing this to stop hurting myself." Later that evening, Rachel stood alone in her bedroom. The red dress shimmered beneath the low light, her grandmother's necklace catching the last sliver of sunset. She stared at her reflection, really stared. This was not the woman who cried herself to sleep on bathroom floors. This was not the woman who made excuses for why he never came home or who Googled emotional affair at 2 a.m. just to know if she was allowed to feel betrayed. This was Rachel Caldwell's survivor strategist woman. And tomorrow night the world would see her. On her bedside table, next to a framed photo of her mother, sat a folded note she hadn't dared open in years. Her mother's handwriting. "If you ever forget who you are, put on the thing that scared you most and walk straight through the fear. That's your power." Rachel didn't cry. She didn't need to. She folded the note, slipped it into her clutch, and stood tall. The red dress fit like a second skin. Not because it made her look powerful, but because she already was. The restaurant was dimly lit, elegant, in a way that whispered money rather than shouted it. Maison de Lumière, white linens, crystal chandeliers, and a maitre d', who addressed every guest by name. Rachel entered just past 7:50, escorted in by a hostess who looked young enough to be Olivia's intern. She passed the bar where her friend Layla sat sipping wine and pretending not to watch. Sophia texted her all in place. "He's here," she's glowing. "You look like revenge in heels." Rachel didn't reply. She didn't need to. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about truth delivered in velvet and steel. Olivia's family sat at the long table near the center of the room, the best seat in the house. Her mother wore pearls. Her father was laughing with a waiter. Her two brothers, tall, athletic, respectful, had just raised a toast to the most radiant woman in the room. Rachel hung back for a moment, unseen, watching. And there he was, Ethan, her husband, leaning across the table, slipping a velvet box into Olivia's hand. She opened it and gasped, a bracelet. Silver, elegant, expensive. The one Rachel had found in his browser history 3 months ago, the one he said was too over the top for her. He reached for Olivia's hand, smiling like he still believed himself to be the hero in this story. The room blurred for a moment. Rachel blinked it away, then stepped forward. "Excuse me?" Her voice was calm, clear. It sliced through the laughter like a blade through satin. Ethan turned first, the color drained from his face. Rachel? Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Olivia turned confused, then froze. You weren't invited, Ethan began, half rising. But I came with a gift, Rachel interrupted. For Olivia? She turned to the young woman. You don't know me, but I know you. Her eyes were steady. Her voice didn't shake. I know the necklace you're wearing was purchased the same weekend my husband said he was flying to a tech conference in Austin. She took a step closer. I know the hotel you stayed in, the dates, the suite, the room service. She reached into her clutch and gently pulled out a small envelope. From it, she extracted 3 photographs, a folded receipt, and a USB drive. Here's your gift. Olivia looked at the photos and went pale. The receipt, a Montauk Inn billed to Ethan's business card. The USB. Well, Rachel didn't explain that one. She didn't need to. Ethan's voice cracked Rachel. We can talk? You've had 3 years to talk, she said, not looking at him, then turned to Olivia's family. You seem like kind people. You opened your hearts to a man who told you he was divorced, a man who introduced your daughter to his entire company as a legitimate partner. Olivia's father stood up slowly. He told us he was separated. Rachel's expression didn't change. He wasn't. Another beat of silence. One of Olivia's brothers picked up a photo and studied it. His jaw tightened. Olivia, he said, you knew I didn't, at first, she stammered. I swear. He said she knew. That it was over. That they just lived together for business reasons. Rachel turned to her gently. That's a lie. He tells well. She paused, looked at Ethan. He looked like a cornered animal. Rachel smiled slightly, then raised her glass of water. Happy birthday, Olivia, she said. I hope you find a man who is truly yours one day. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. She turned and walked away. Heels clicking, dress, trailing like fire behind her. As she reached the exit, someone started clapping, just once. Then again. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. A woman near the bar, then a waiter. Then Olivia's older brother Rachel didn't turn back. She didn't have to. Her dignity followed her out like perfume. The night after the restaurant, Rachel didn't cry. Not because she wasn't hurting, she was. Pain still lived in her bones like a second heartbeat. But because for the first time in months, maybe years, there was silence inside her. No spinning, no second guessing, no rehearsing how to confront, explain, or apologize for her own instincts. She slept deeply, and in the morning her phone began to buzz. Ethan. First, the frantic texts, please call me. I messed up. I love you. Let's talk. Then voicemails. First angry, then tearful. You blindsided me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Is that what you wanted? To ruin my life? Rachel listened to none of them. She simply forwarded every message to her lawyer. No contact. That was the new rule. Ethan didn't know it yet, but he had lost access not just to their shared accounts, but to her presence, her warmth, her energy. He had forfeited the right to occupy her mind. Her lawyer texted back later that day, "We've issued a no-contact warning. Focus on yourself. We'll handle everything else." And she did. 2 days later, a message came from an unknown number. Just a first name. Olivia? Rachel hesitated before opening it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you an apology. I knew eventually, and I stayed anyway. My parents won't speak to me. My brothers say I betrayed more than just you. You didn't deserve any of this. I'm sorry. Rachel stared at the words for a long time, then replied, I don't hate you. I pity the part of me that spent years blaming myself while he lied to us both. Take care of yourself. That was it. She blocked the number after. Closure wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just quiet boundaries. Rachel moved out of the house 2 weeks later. She didn't take everything, just what was truly hers. A few books, her grandmother's necklace, a collection of journals she'd kept hidden in drawers. The red dress stayed. It had served its purpose. She found a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy but full of light. The kind of place where sound bounced freely, and nothing smelled like old memories. She bought herself fresh linens, sage green towels, a new teapot. For the first time in a long time, everything in her space reflected her alone. One morning she woke up at 600 a.m., not because she had to, but because her body was rested and curious. She made herself coffee, laced up running shoes that had been gathering dust, and ran. Just around the block, just until her lungs burned and her mind cleared. She kept running every day after. Sometimes she cried at the stoplight. Sometimes she smiled at the rising sun. Healing, it turned out, wasn't always graceful, but it was honest. Rachel signed up for a writing class, something she hadn't done since college. At first the words came out clumsy, afraid. Then one morning she wrote an essay called "The Night I Stood Still and Watched the Truth." Her professor emailed her later, "I hope you publish this. Other women need to read it." She didn't write it for publication, though. She wrote it because it reminded her that she still had a voice, and it was strong. The divorce was finalized quietly, efficiently. Rachel didn't attend the last court date. Her lawyer handled everything. Ethan settled quickly. Perhaps too quickly. His company was under scrutiny now, especially after a few brave employees came forward about misuse of funds. He blamed Rachel, of course, but his blame no longer carried weight. She wasn't the same woman who once apologized for crying too much or asking too many questions. That woman was gone. 6 months passed. On her 36th birthday, Layla threw her a brunch with 24 women friends, co-workers, classmates. Not one of them asked about Ethan. They toasted to Rachel. To her courage, to her comeback, to her clarity. And late that night, Rachel sat alone on her balcony legs, curled under her sipping chamomile tea. A text pinged through. Unknown number. Short. Bear. I'm getting help. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve it, E. She stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. Not because she was angry, but because she no longer needed the apology. She had already forgiven herself. And that was more than enough. 1 year to the day, since the night Rachel tore her old life wide open, she stood before a mirror, wearing white, not bridal white, celebration, white, not for purity, for power. She'd named the event, the rebirth gathering part, birthday part, reclamation. There were no gifts, only people who had shown up for her during the darkest 12 months of her life. Layla arrived early, arms full of sunflowers and champagne. 36 looks good on you, she whispered as she hugged her tight. I earned every wrinkle. Rachel grinned and meant it. Her apartment, once empty and echoing, was now vibrant with color and soft with life. There were plants on every windowsill, a handwritten quote on the fridge, "Be the woman you needed when you were hurting." Soft music floated through the room as guests arrived, friends from the writing workshop, women from her gym, 2 co-workers who had quietly left Ethan's company and now worked with her at a new HR startup. And then, the doorbell rang. Rachel opened it to see her mother and older sister Susan holding a small box wrapped in newspaper and tied with red yarn. "You didn't have to bring anything?" Rachel said, overwhelmed. "We didn't." Her mother smiled. "We brought something that already belonged to you." Inside the box was a small leather-bound notebook, cracked at the spine. Rachel opened it slowly. It was her grandmother's journal, the one she thought had been lost. On the first page in faded ink was a sentence underlined twice. "We survive by remembering our name even when others try to rewrite it." Rachel ran her hand over the words. Later that night, the lights were dimmed, the candles lit. Her guests gathered around as Layla raised a toast. To Rachel, she began. To not just surviving betrayal, but dancing in the ashes and building something even stronger. To the woman who didn't just reclaim her name, she redefined it. Everyone clapped. Rachel felt the sting of tears in her eyes, but this time they were clean. Not heavy, not dragging years of regret behind them, just real. When the party began to wind down, someone brought out a cake shaped like a phoenix. Susan had ordered it without telling her. "Too cheesy?" she asked. Rachel shook her head. "No, it's perfect." At midnight, the last guest waved goodbye. Rachel stood alone at the window with a blanket around her shoulders, sipping tea. The city pulsed below. The same city where she'd once cried in the back of an Uber lipstick, smeared and heart split open. The same city where she'd rebuilt herself piece by piece without needing to shout about it. Her phone buzzed, a number she hadn't saved but still recognized instantly. Ethan. The message was short. I heard about your new business. You're doing amazing. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I lost everything, but I hope you're happy. E. Rachel looked at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone down. Screen face down. Not out of hatred, but because she didn't need to respond to pain that no longer controlled her. Sometimes silence is the greatest kindness and the loudest closure. She picked up her grandmother's journal again, flipped to the last blank page, and began to write in her own hand. I don't need revenge. I don't need applause. I don't even need closure. I just need to remember that I once broke. And then I rose. She paused, then wrote one final line, and I did it with my own name, still intact. She closed the journal gently, and for the first time in years turned off the lights, not to hide from the dark, but to rest in it, because she knew the light was already inside her. You don't need revenge to reclaim your power. You just need to stop letting someone else control your story. Rachel didn't scream, beg, or break down. She stood up. She exposed the truth. She walked away with her dignity intact, because healing isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and unstoppable. And the strongest woman isn't the one who wins the argument. She's the one who chooses herself and never looks back.